Hey, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Frank About Health. The date is June 13th, 2024. I am so happy to reintroduce my co-host, Phyllis Quinlan, to this episode. We will also be having an appearance with Dr. Jennifer Griggs, who is on her way, but will be here in about 15 minutes. And we're going to have an interesting conversation that kind of dovetails from where I was with Dr. Mira Branco this past Tuesday on the hard skills, where we talked about leadership in the hospital system, whether it's your doctor, your nurse, or even yourself, the patient. We all play a leadership role in our healthcare. We just have to learn to have that mindset, especially for those that are advocates or caregivers, but even more so yourself, the patient. So I thought this was a perfect segue to have both Jennifer and Phyllis come back to Frank About Health so we can really talk about the leadership roles and activities that they are both involved in, whether it's from a research perspective, a podcast perspective. And if you remember, both Phyllis and Jennifer were very instrumental on a show that we did about a year ago on the Replacement Child Forum, a whole lesson on forgiveness and dignity, which they learned a lot from, as I did, as Phyllis did. And just leadership itself is a big issue in the healthcare space today. So I think it's just important that I have my two, I don't know, should I call you freedom fighters or leadership warriors, but definitely strong advocates and very respected colleagues of mine from not just this show, but the upcoming project that I announced both on the hard skills and previously on an episode of Frank About Health. So let me do the formality of a disclaimer and then, of course, reintroduce Phyllis and we will be on our way. The information here is food for thought. They are not the views of TalkRadio.nyc. They are not the views of the Dignity Lab. They are not the views of MFW Consulting. They are not the views of Frank About Health. They are our views from the conversation that we will engage in during the next hour. And as such, we hope that we teach you something. If it is not for you, that is fine. But we are not providing any forced recommendations of changes to be made to your current treatment protocol, whether it's with your primary care physician, your neurologist, your psychologist, your social worker, your oncologist, your cardiologist, the list goes on. The point is, we want to be a support. We do not want to be a forced guide. And that being said, I'm doing justice by reintroducing Phyllis Quinlan, dear friend of mine, and I am so glad that you've come back to just talk about what have you been doing since we were last together.
Well, thank you for having me back. It has been way too long, my friend. Way too long. I have missed you. I have missed the program, and I have clearly missed your listeners. So, what have I been doing? Um, Really trying to crisscross the country and raise awareness about leadership imperatives for the 21st century. My niche or my target area is in the field of healthcare.
Yes.
But I think the message that we have about the importance of good leadership now, the importance of a healthy work environment, the importance of leading with dignity is a message for every venue, every CEO, every executive director, every entrepreneur who owns their own company and is looking really to create an environment, an atmosphere where talent wants to stay and thrive.
Right, right. And I guess also when we were last with Jennifer on the Replacement Child Forum, one takeaway that I think you had was that you really wanted to understand the whole role in dignity and how it helps with forgiveness, because we were looking at a section, a community of individuals that were really going through life. Well, one could say not forgiving themselves for the fact that they were a replacement child.
um, or 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 somehow making it something that they did, and then coming to terms with the fact that this was done to them, that they did not do it, and then finding a way back to having a better and a more healthy relationship first with their parents, who clearly had much invested in developing that replacement child mentality or energy or persona, and then of course as adults letting go of that child that had been put in that situation, and then walking back into living and breathing, very accountable, thriving adults, which I think, we did a really good job in that segment about.
Yes, absolutely. Well, this is, after all, Brain Awareness Month. And as my viewers know, I did start the month with an Alzheimer's show. And you and I will be, hint, hint, doing a show on Down syndrome next week. But in terms of this whole aspect of leadership, one could say, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that you have to have a sense of mental awareness, whether it's your own defenses, your own education, your own mission in how you present yourselves when dealing with healthcare issues. I mean, whether it's in the role you carry, doctor, nurse, ENT worker, whatever, or it's if you're a caregiver, correct? Would you like to show the difference in the mindset that each part may play?
Yeah, I let's speak about healthcare in leadership in healthcare, because that's really where I feel the most comfortable in sharing with your audience at this point. Um,
Okay.
the long ago and far away, the equation for success was great academic preparation and good clinical competency and certification, national certifications in your skills, regardless of what profession you had: respiratory therapist, physician, surgeon, nurse.
Right.
And we thought that that equation, one plus the other, would lead to a successful career or even a happy life. And I'm a big proponent of that. I was one of the nurses that really was, pushing along and encouraging everybody to get a baccalaureate degree as the entry, the consistent basic entry level into nursing. And we pretty much succeeded doing that. But at the end of the day, the equation fell short. And what we have come to know and finally embrace is that the secret sauce, if you will, that missing piece in that equation, was emotional intelligence.
Yes.
And if you don't have a strong sense of self and a real strong sense of being self aware, not a sense of self from a narcissistic or ego
Right.
based
Right.
perspective, but if you don't have a strong sense of self awareness and couple that with good, strong skills in self management, those are the competencies for personal emotional intelligence development. If you don't have those, then you cannot proceed to think that you can develop the social competencies in emotional intelligence, which are social awareness and relationship management, because the competencies of emotional intelligence are linear. You first work on yourself before you can engage or work or have the audacity to lead others. And,
Right.
one of the key questions that I ask as someone who has been a director in clinical areas, education areas, administrative areas, when I am hiring someone who is a prospective candidate, a candidate for a leadership position, my one and only question is, help me understand why anyone should want to be led by you.
Yes.
And it's a
Exactly.
very unsettling question because most people are like, wow, I didn't see that coming. And which
Correct.
is indeed why I work so hard on developing that question, because I want to see how they rock, you know? And do they come back at me with, well, I went to this school, that school, here's my clinical background, I led this project, I did this initiative, and I have a certification here, there, and everywhere. That's not what I'm looking for. What I want somebody to do is tell me about their journey to developing their empathy and compassion. I want someone to tell me that, or at least convey to me in some way, that they understand how hard it is to be an adult in the 21st century, let alone a leader in the 21st century, let alone a leader in healthcare in the 21st century, in the face of something that I call persistent uncertainty, because it's
Right.
hard to lead people when you yourself don't know where we're going.
Absolutely. And I think that was part of when we first met. We were talking about the Share the Care organization. And I perceived that the way that whole team structure was set up is those individuals within the family or within the network of team builders that are supporting the patient have to be assessed for their empathy and their self-awareness and everything that you've just outlined.
Well, it's not so much as an assessment, but they certainly are put in a group where everyone has a turn at leading, and therefore everyone has a turn to lean into where they're strong and where they need to do a little work, because that really is the journey of adulthood, right? You're constantly confronted with what I call boot camp moments. You're kind of shown, gee, you're really strong here, but you really need to do a little work there. And do you have the heart and the tenacity and the will to lean into moments where you, as a grown, accomplished, competent adult, professional adult, come face to face with the fact that you still need to do some more work, which is a very difficult reality for people to do. But if you embrace the fact that transactional leadership is no longer of value to anyone, that there
Right.
are moments where transaction is necessary. So let's use the operating room first, as an example. When we're doing the job, when we're doing the work, you're setting up the case, you're turning over the rooms, you're getting the patient in, everything's getting set up and everything. That's very transactional. Step 1, step 2, step 3, we know exactly what we need to do. But when
Right.
we start coming together as a team to do surgery on an individual, the leader, the surgeon, if you will, anesthesia, if you will, has to come together and bring that team together for a moment to understand that this is a human being on the table, and that what
Right.
we do is important, and that they have a family and hopes and dreams, and they're pinning them on us to give them the best we have on that particular day. And there
Yes.
is more now. What we need to do is understand that we are all humans and engage in that humanity, and then collectively go forward to try to accomplish a common goal.
Correct. Correct. Now, would you say that on the book that you were writing on bullying, that has a lot of interplay in terms of those that are lacking the self-awareness, or how would you pivot that?
So, the book that I'm working on still is the second edition of the original book. And
Right.
it talks a lot more about the need for growing emotional intelligence as the antidote for disruptive behavior in the workplace. The two categories of disruptive behavior that I focus on are chronic incivility and then bullying, okay, where bullying is actually abusive. This is a
Right.
person who is looking to take advantage and be abusive towards another. Where someone who's chronically uncivil has low emotional intelligence and is that person that if they called in sick and you still had to work short, you'd probably have a better day because they just are annoying and distracted and suck all the energy out of the room, and they're more work than the job itself. And they just, take the wind out of your sails, but they are not harmful. They're exhausting, but they're not harmful. Whereas a bully is actually harmful. They really can have, great, effects on somebody's body, mind, and spirit.
Right.
So when we talk about healthcare leadership in the 21st century, especially post-COVID, where we now have workers who are far more empowered and um, competent than they were pre-COVID by virtue of their COVID experience. They have
Right.
worked through all of that and have come out saying almost to a person, I'm stronger than I ever thought I could be. That's the word of growth. That's not the word of post-traumatic stress. That's the words of growth, the language of growth. When your
Right.
team is telling you that, then you have to level up your leadership in order to be able to manage them, or you're going to bleed that talent. And one of the ways to do that is to create a healthy work environment that is sustainable, because
Correct.
so many people now are really focusing on their own good self-care. You can't ask them to do the homework and then come into the classroom and have it be toxic.
Right.
You can't ask them to do that for themselves and then not give them a place that mirrors that in order to work.
Well, we're about to take our first break, but when we return, um, I want to go into that healthy workplace environment issue and break it down in terms of the leadership roles that exist within that work environment. Okay. All right. And stay tuned right here on TalkRadio.nyc and on our social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitch. We'll be back in a few.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on TalkRadio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on TalkRadio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on TalkRadio.nyc.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on TalkRadio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back. As you've just heard from Phyllis Quinlan in the first section, she was talking about a lot of the necessary qualities that we would like to say, would have or could have, especially if they want to be successful in their environment, in the leadership role that they carry. And we are obviously talking about hospital systems. And yes, Logan, in answer to your question. That all being said, we're going to now introduce Jennifer Griggs into the conversation, but we wanted to also follow up with Phyllis Quinlan to discuss the different leadership positions in the hospital workplace and maybe where she can get into the emotional intelligence issues or the bullying and incivility issues that she has noticed with specific doctors or nurses or patients themselves. Because as everyone remembers from my appearance on the Hard Skills, I had mentioned that I'm advocating for the patient to take a leadership role in their own healthcare, but it is not recognized by the healthcare system as an actual leadership role because they are not employees of that system. But yet the common thread exists: the issues of empathy, the issues of communication, the issues of mindfulness, the issues of trying to remain as civil as possible, and how a patient can resist bullying behavior. So that all being said, first of all, welcome, Jennifer. I'm glad you could join us. I'm glad everything worked out for you, given what you were telling me was some of your limitations, but you've joined us right at a pivotal point where, Phyllis, I'd like you to wrap up a little bit of what you said in segment one, but then also to be a perfect segue to talk about the kind of work that both you and Jennifer have collaborated on recently, where I know leadership is involved, but also, if you recall from our episode on the Replacement Child Forum, her talk about dignity and forgiveness was very moving for both of us. So I want to see how that also plays a part in understanding the leadership positions in the workplace system.
So as I see it, the leadership imperative of the 21st century, and we're going to focus on healthcare right now, it's got several pieces to it. One piece is that we definitely have to do everything we can to create the healthiest work environment possible. So that means that we have to make sure we are, communicating at the best possible way, that we have true collaboration. I'm going to expand on that in a minute. That we have meaningful recognition, that every time we recognize someone, we're not just saying great job, but we're anchoring their understanding that what they do is vital to the team and to the patients, and they anchor their sense of belonging. When people feel they belong to a department or an organization, they're less likely to leave, and they're going to keep their talent with us. There's authentic leadership that needs to happen. And in that authentic leadership is really the courage to be able to take on the disruptive behaviors of bullying and incivility. There's no place for these in the healthcare anymore. We have very savvy, very worldly and patient populations who have an expectation. We are 10 plus years into having what we call patient-centered care and patient experience groups. And, we really have to now, make those things come alive and not just talk about them. So for those leaders that are engaging in transactional leadership, I believe they're going to find themselves bleeding talent or not being able to achieve any benchmarks that reflect cohesive teamwork, because that type of leadership has come and gone. And as I shared with you, post-COVID, people are feeling far more competent and confident than ever. So you need to level up your leadership piece that way. But going forward, you need to be able to address those behaviors that are tugging away at cohesive team building and team engagement. So that we need to do things in healthcare now that are beyond cooperation, beyond collaboration, and actually promote solidarity. And that was the example that COVID gave us. We never came together as an interprofessional team greater than we did than during COVID. Everybody was on a level playing field. Everybody understood their role. Everybody respected everybody's role. Everybody saw each other as vital and essential. And we should not go back into the silos of being blind to those achievements and insights just because COVID is behind us. That was the universe showing us that's the direction you need to go in. So we need to really take down silos, put our egos in the drawer, really start to develop those interprofessional collaborations in a healthy work environment that will take us beyond cooperation and collaboration and really have solidarity of purpose.
Right. Absolutely. And welcome, Jennifer. I mean, again, I'm still blown away what you said a year and I think a little bit more than a year and a half ago. But the whole issue of forgiveness is a mixture of not just understanding that it is a future that will not happen, or the hope for a future is lost. I think that's what you said. But you also pointed out that I guess when looking at whatever your trauma is, if you forgive yourself, then you know how to work with it rather than work against it. And I really wanted to get a segue or a bridge between what Phyllis just articulated about workplace systems and how forgiveness and even dignity plays a role in that. Or maybe it's still being learned or trained to those workers. But whatever insights you have, I'm looking forward to hear them.
Well, I'm really delighted to be here and appreciate your letting me in, even though I'm late, and so happy to be back with you, Frank, and with Phyllis. Yes, forgiveness is giving up all hope of a better past.
That's it.
And it's a shift in our emotional experience. Forgiveness at work has been studied and researched and is one of the elements of a virtuous organization along with dignity. And they really do go hand in hand. Just for people who haven't heard or need a refresher, our dignity is our inherent worth or value. It's congenital. We're born with it. It's our birthright. And nobody has more or less than another. Unlike respect, which is acquired. I think about this in the medical model. Respect we have to earn. You can't really demand respect, as Donna Hicks, who wrote the book Dignity, has said. You have to earn respect, but you can demand that your dignity be honored. One of the things, since we last talked about this, that I've started to see is how often we violate our own dignity as leaders. That when we lash out at somebody or we do something that violates their dignity, we're also violating our own. We're making ourselves smaller. We're diminishing our life.
Right.
And I think it's been a transformative lens. For me as a leader, I lead a team of 23 people. We serve close to 400 physicians across the state of Michigan. And our team has this culture of purpose. One of our core values, Phyllis, is collaboration. I'm going to have to bring back solidarity to the team and see if they want to reboot that.
Yes.
But yeah, I think when we don't hold leaders accountable, or if leaders don't hold bullies accountable, we contaminate the whole organization.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I gather is the whole aspect of bullying driven by those that haven't forgiven themselves or don't even understand their own self-respect or dignity?
No.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to jump in, Jennifer, but
Please.
it's not something you do to yourself. So we're not going to blame the victim here. Okay, keeping in mind that someone who is engaging in bullying behavior is engaging in narcissistic behavior. And by virtue of that, it has to put someone underneath them in order to feel like they're tall. They will engage in typical narcissistic communication, dysfunctional communication techniques like plausible deniability and gaslighting in order to make the other person feel as though they are incompetent and confident and they can get their way. When you are dealing with narcissists or anybody in an abusive behavior, it's about power. Just make no mistake.
Okay.
It's about me exerting my power over you, whether that is child abuse, domestic violence, elder abuse, or bullying in the workplace.
Okay, so one can say, and correct me if I'm wrong, that narcissism may exist. Oh, well, a narcissist may have dignity or respect or whatever, but there's a divide, and their narcissistic behavior is totally separate and unique from it. They just don't use the dignity, self-respect, or any of the things we've been discussing in their process of bullying. There's no interrelationship.
So we don't know enough about narcissists to be able to give us that kind of global perspective. And the reason is that we don't have enough to study. And that's because they don't lend themselves to study because they're perfect and they're wonderful. And, there's nothing they need to fix. And so why would you need to study me? Do you know what I mean? Just watch what I'm doing. I'm so terrific. You just bask in the glory of my presence. Where really what we know from some narcissistic, teachings from our colleagues in behavioral health is that there's a real lack of empathy for the human experience, that they are very self-focused and that it's all roads lead to them, and that people are there to serve their agenda. They will engage in some kind of an acquaintance or pseudo relationship with people based on usefulness, not feelings.
That's true.
You are useful to me, you're in my circle. The minute you're no longer useful to me, we kick you to the curb. We move on to someone else. So you have to think of the admiring of oneself, as Greek mythology has said, and and understanding that the world should come to me. The rules don't matter. I am entitled. You're not as special. And if you come at me or threaten me in any way, then the games begin.
That appears then that the whole aspect of narcissism is the outlier or the conundrum in all the research that both of you are doing in areas of leadership and dignity. Well, we're ready for our second break. And the thing is that I just want to open our next segment where both Phyllis and Jennifer share their recent work, which is both podcast-oriented, webinar-oriented, speaking events-oriented. That's a lot more progress that has happened from two very special guests that are in my upcoming documentary about this very show. And so please stay tuned right here on TalkRadio.nyc and on our social media so that we can really get the sizzle of what both of you have been doing for the past year. So, all right, stay tuned. We'll be back in a few.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on TalkRadio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on TalkRadio.nyc.
Were you an essential worker during the pandemic? If you needed to learn stages of epilepsy, did you depend on advocates? Did you use new innovations to cope with mental and neurological issues? Maintaining high quality of life and keeping good mental health are what we all strive for. I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each week top healthcare influencers, professionals, and innovators answer these questions and more. Stay tuned on Thursdays at 5 p.m. on TalkRadio.nyc, and I will continue to be frank about health with all of you.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on TalkRadio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back. So the both of you have been very busy together, I think, in the last few months. I know that you both had appeared on a leadership seminar or webinar. Why don't you tell me, well, I mean, I was there, but tell the audience about what the both of you discussed and how it influenced a lot of the work that you both are doing in the area of leadership and dignity.
Why don't you start, Jen?
Sure. It was a great session. Jane Halford from Halford Associates organized it. And I talked about dignity and leading with dignity, what it looks like when dignity is honored, and even more important, when it's violated, and then how we can reclaim our dignity after harm.
Yes.
It was terrific. And then Phyllis's section was wonderful.
I'm sure. I mean, it was a lot of what you talked about. I mean, what we've been talking about right now for the past half hour was echoed during that webinar.
That's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes.
Was there any special takeaway that maybe we haven't discussed yet that a lot of people can learn from?
I think for me, my big takeaway is that you can reclaim your dignity after harm, that we don't have to stay in a victim role, that we can recalibrate if we've made mistakes as leaders, we can take accountability. And that's tremendously healing, not just for the leader and the people they've harmed, but the entire ecosystem. That, you can witness something, incivility, and that affects your joy at work, your meaning, whether you want to even go to work. But there are ways that we can recalibrate and shift. We do need to let people know that we've learned. Otherwise, they can be really destabilized if we just change our behavior. If we used to dominate a conversation and now we're sitting back a little bit, that can
Right.
be destabilizing for people. But my real message moving forward is, yes, let's learn about the elements of dignity and what it feels like, what happens when dignity is violated. But let's take a deeper dive into how we can reclaim dignity for ourselves, for others, the organization, frankly, our community and the world.
Yes, absolutely. I gather maybe the question that keeps going through my mind, because I'm experiencing this, especially in recent events with both my father and my cousin. I know, Phyllis, you know all about my cousin's story, and we're at the point where we're looking for daycare services for her. And we had a meeting with her primary care physician as well as her neurologist. And what I've noticed is that, obviously, from the years of working with her case, I was approaching it as if I was not, I am her advocate. So I was in a leadership role, and I was making the requests as necessary for Medicaid as well as for the hospital system we were dealing with. But I noticed resistance coming in particular from the neurologist. And I decided, well, I can understand why the resistance exists. Let me bring it over to the primary care physician's situation, looking at the overall picture of my cousin's health. And she then told me the way to diffuse it and still get my end goal. So I found myself actually in my cousin's situation, feeling like I was working on a team project. And I
You
thought,
were.
wow, it's interesting, because I was always imagining that if I'm the doctor or if I'm the intern or if I'm the technician, that I have a justified role. But as an advocate of a family member, I created my own role and used a lot of the skills that we've talked about in order to get through those sessions, which I guess that's a benefit that I have. But it tells me that everyone needs to adapt to that kind of mindset, especially like you said earlier, Phyllis, COVID taught all of us that we were on our own. So you
So,
had to develop your own skill set.
as a consumer of the healthcare product or the healthcare system, and you
Right.
are
You have to
advocating,
be not the consumer, but now the leader who's
well,
taking care of a consumer issue.
as someone who's consuming and you're advocating for your cousin, can you imagine if you were working with a team that was less than empathetic with, and appreciative of what your situation is as a caregiver, a family caregiver, and appreciative of the good job that you're doing? So if the team can't get along together, if you're noticing in that huddle, if you will, that group setting where you're discussing what's going to happen and how we're going to navigate this issue and support your cousin, if you're getting the sense that the team isn't cohesive, if you're getting the sense that the team cannot role model negotiation, the team is not open to discussion, and it's a top down kind of, we're going to talk at you, we're not going to talk with you. If they're doing that to each other, then how do you, as the potential consumer of this product and advocate for your cousin who needs advocacy, cannot stand up and advocate for herself any longer well enough or consistently, then you lose faith in that team, and now we lose you, and the team is still not cohesive, and they want to blame you for being reluctant, as opposed to the dynamics of the team somewhat drove you away because you didn't have that sense of belonging, you didn't have that sense of inclusion.
Correct. But I held on to my dignity. That's what kept me focused. So,
and your cousins.
well, that too, of course. I think the one thing that I wanted to figure out, though, is I guess, is the patient at the end of the line in terms of the distribution chain of understanding that there's dignity in the whole healthcare ecosystem? Because you may be a consumer of healthcare, as you mentioned, Phyllis, but remember, they're taking care of you, the patient. So you're the big case that they all have to professionally deal with. So is that where the education on dignity is being focused now, on the individual patient and how to develop their own, I wouldn't want to call it vigilance, but their own leadership of owning themselves, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Jen, I think this is a great question for you.
Yes, so I'm thinking about the elements of dignity that Donna Hicks has identified, and those include safety, inclusion, acceptance of identity, and then understanding, recognition, and acknowledgement, which I just put together as being seen and heard. And then there's the justice elements, which are autonomy, accountability, fairness, and being given the benefit of the doubt. And I think when I think about your situation, I'm thinking about autonomy and accountability. So to whom is the team accountable? They should be accountable to the patients and the patient's community, you and other family members. When that doesn't happen, when we don't see what's happening, when our dignity is violated, we just feel bad, and we feel it in our body, and we might avoid conflict. That's a temptation we can fall prey to, or we might lash out because our dignity's been violated. I think for me, being able to name those elements, if not violated, bruised, or at risk elements.
At risk, I would say
at risk. Yeah.
Like the red flags go up and you get very anxious. You don't know what's happening.
And you feel that in your body.
Yes. Yes.
And I think, to speak to Phyllis's work, that awareness of the body, it can be the best place to start. And then to think about, is this dignity or pride? Pride is very different. Is it dignity or honor? Is it just not getting what you wanted? My kids can tell me, well, I didn't get an ice cream. You violated my dignity. That's, really not dignity, honey. Just not getting what you want.
Good try.
Yeah. So it's a scan that shows us something we don't want to hear about. As an oncologist, I talk a lot about scans people don't like the results of. That's not a dignity violation, but it is a dignity violation not to give that patient autonomy about their choices going forward, not to hear and sit with their emotions, not to provide safety, which is so linked to trust. And obviously trust takes a while to build and is so easy to break. It sounds like you had to do some negotiating around trust.
Oh, I was juggling I'm doing the trust machine right now.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate because as I shared before, we're many years into the model of patient-centered care and
Right,
putting the patient at the center of the team, not on the outside of the team, not at the head of the team, but at the center of the team with the understanding that we work for them. And the first thing we need to do is be able to listen to what they want and listen
right,
closely, not just say, okay, you have XYZ diagnosis, here's what we're going to do to you, bada bing, bada boop, bada bop. But here's what the scan or the diagnosis shows. We'd like to talk to you a little bit about what that means and certainly take your questions and then talk to you about, options for treatment or options for non-treatment. What would that look like? And really
right.
give you, so you can make what we classically call an informed decision, but also be able to have some self-determination in exactly how aggressive or non-aggressive you want to be in what we have to offer you.
Incredible. And I guess if anything, it also brings not just the issue of dignity to the advocate or the patient, but even if you're getting misinformation from the doctor, is that a dignity issue or is that an issue of not really being self-aware?
That could be a competence issue, right? There's skill and competence.
Okay.
So when we hire on our team, and imagine hiring a physician, you want somebody who has the skill set
Right.
that you want, and then you also want those dispositions and behaviors and a mindset. And frankly, I don't really care what's going on in somebody's head, their behavior. Like, we don't really need to change hearts and minds. We
Right.
want equitable, fair, just, patient-centered treatment. So it's really the outcome we're aiming for.
Right.
The other thing that I do think self-awareness plays a big role. So if a physician feels that they're not trusted, they can get really defensive and
Mm-hmm.
repel feedback. And one of the things, when I left my previous role at the University of Rochester, I gave each of my patients an oncologist, and they'd call me. They found my home number in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and they'd call and they'd say, we're not developing the same relationship we had with you. And I said, of course you're not. I was there from the beginning. The thing you can do to get more of what you need from the doctor is to let them know you trust them. And it's a really ironic thing that even if you're still building a relationship, to tell somebody you trust them brings you on the same side. So it's not about the doctor anymore. It's
Right.
about that shared reality, that solidarity that Phyllis has enjoined us to honor. It's that fusing of goals. And all of my previous patients did that. They said to the doctor, I trust you. I really value your opinion. Could you answer a few more questions for me? And that therapeutic alliance happened in one visit. So it's kind of
Nice.
interesting. You have to trust before you can tell somebody you trust them, but you may also get better dispositions and behaviors if you let them know, I trust you and I need you. Doctors don't really want to
Up
be
front.
loved or liked. We want to be trusted.
And the
Yes.
basis of that trust development is to be able to have a relationship which starts with listening and honest
Yes.
communication. And then, you're giving them a reason to trust.
Yes.
Yes.
And then the patient physician relationship can really take off from there.
This is incredible. When I was on the hard skills, I talked about how when I asked the right questions to the doctor, like in my father's case, they like the question because it gives them feedback that they're up to par with their skill set or even their education in the particular practice, in this case, oncology, that could be an aspect of providing the trust up front when you're validating them with information you already know what they've presented in the past, but you're saying, have you looked into this as well? And they're like, wow, that's a good question. And before you know it, it seems that that trust connection is built in that same speed that you were just mentioning.
Mhm.
We're about to take our final break, but like you said, Phyllis, we're in the flow. So I can't believe we only have like another 10 or 12 minutes left to wrap up and really talk about the future of where we're all going. But when we return right here on Frank About Health, we're going to learn about the Dignity Lab and the podcast. And we're going to learn more, Phyllis, about some of are you going to be speaking in the near future? I think, yes. I want to know about that. And I will wrap up the show by continuing on the promotion of my new venture, Healthy Media, which is going to continue on Frank About Health, as well as other premium extensions of that in the future. So please stay tuned right here on Frank About Health of TalkRadio.nyc and our socials. We will be back in a few.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on TalkRadio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on TalkRadio.nyc.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on TalkRadio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on TalkRadio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on TalkRadio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back. For those of you who heard the commercial break right now, you heard Dr. Mira Branco in The Hard Skills, which is appearing on Tuesdays, same time as this one. If any of you had a chance to see, I was her special guest last Tuesday, and we already did a discussion on a lot of what Phyllis, Jennifer, and I were discussing in the last segment. So that being said, since we're talking about podcasts, I understand you've got one called the Dignity Lab.
That's right.
Share about it,
Yes.
the details behind it.
So we just started our second season. It drops every Sunday, every single week. I'm the host, and my producer is a dear friend and colleague of mine, Vanessa Aaron. We interview people who excel in leadership, but we've also thought about leadership as how we can impact our communities. So we talk about things like food insecurity and bodily autonomy and how that plays out in our current environment. We talk about a whole host of things at the personal level. I have people on who share deeply personal experiences of recovery and how, when they were able to recognize their own dignity, Fred Coulter in particular talks about how he was able to see the dignity of other people and how that was life-changing. Each episode is between 35 and 60 minutes. And I do have to warn everybody, most people say they have to listen to each episode a couple times because it's so dense. I have to say this is lighting me up more than anything I can remember in a really long time. So I'd love to have people who are listening check it out, subscribe, like, share, and all those things. And if you're facing a dignity dilemma, we'd love to have you on the show, and you can remain anonymous.
Well, where is it? Is it on Spotify or
It's
YouTube or?
every place you get your podcast. It's Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. And you can also just go straight to the website, www.thedignitylab.com.
Awesome. Awesome. What has been the response so far? Has it been amazing? I mean, I'm sure it has been. That's why I'm asking you if you've had the same response.
It has been. The people who are friends of mine or clients of mine, I got a text message earlier today that the episode that dropped on Sunday was healing to one of my clients, hearing another person describe a failure at work and how she's recovered from that. So I do find that the conversations are transforming the listener, and I'm also hearing from the guests that they haven't experienced a conversation like that before. So I think some of my coaching skills are coming out.
Yeah.
I'm asking questions people don't know the answers to, so they have to go really deep.
Awesome. Phyllis, have you been on the show yet, or will you be on the show?
She will be.
Awesome. Always getting you the exposure you deserve.
No,
You know.
Jen had already reached out to me when she first started this and said, I hope you're going to say yes to one episode. And I said, absolutely.
Okay, awesome. And of course, I'm offering my own opportunity if you feel it's appropriate. So, but tell us about Phyllis. What talking events or engagements are you going to be doing over the summer?
Well, I just did one at the Malloy University, which was really a true honor because I graduated there X amount of years ago. I graduated in 75 with my degree in psychology and sociology, and then in 78 with my degree in nursing. And to go back to your alma mater and be the keynote speaker for their palliative care conference was really one of the highlights of my career. When you're in college, you always wonder, will you ever get to the point where your professors are, or your colleagues are, or you're in a work environment, you see your charge person or your chief nursing, whatever, and you think, well, maybe someday I'll be there. So to walk up on that stage and share the thoughts of 46 years of leadership or 46 years of practice
Right.
was really a wonderful moment for me. So I spoke about building and sustaining your resilience with persistent uncertainty, which is really a tormenting challenge for any adult, let alone a group of professional caregivers. And that's really what we're navigating right now, how to navigate persistent uncertainty. And what I shared with them is nobody can put a solid foot on anything. Not that we had a solid foot on much prior to COVID, but even since, we're still struggling to recover. There's been closures. Certainly, we're downsizing, right-sizing, rethinking our care models yet again. There is, just not, we're still, some of the supply chains are not functioning the way they did before, and that has a lot to do with different events on the global level, and just when you think you're going to get your syringes and your different various durable medical equipment pieces that you've been waiting for so long, a barge hits a bridge and everything's at the bottom of the Chesapeake Bay. So, what is it that you do when it's constantly struggling with trying to adapt to the change that's happening in the moment? Prior to this, we would have change maybe quarterly, annually. We'd have a different set of goals. We'd be able to kind of predict the landscape for the next year, or maybe you could even predict out 6 months and so on. Those days are over, and I'm trying to get everybody to work on their emotional intelligence enough to be able to build their resilience so that they feel more at ease with whatever rolls up to their front door, the door of their department, that they're going to have to navigate now. And
Yes.
to really let go of the transactional need for power and control, because Lord knows we don't have any. Okay, so, and to embrace the fact that what we need to do is really develop our sense as leaders of authenticity and relatability so that we can influence our staff and communicate well enough for them to understand the initiative we're trying to achieve so they voluntarily come on board.
Right.
Not they don't have to because it's, their job, or you're going to, please somebody, or you just want to, not be bothered, or, there's no underlying coercion to getting on board with doing what's right, other than that person explained the goals to me so clearly, and I believe in them so much, influence, trust, if you will, okay, that I want to be part of this on a voluntary basis. And not only do I want to get involved, but tell me what else I can do. When we are at that level of leadership, when we are there, then we're going to navigate persistent uncertainty well. And I'm trying to get everybody to tool up, because in my humble opinion, we're going to be navigating some dicey waters until 2030, at least. So that's 5.5 years of uncertainty, which requires a pioneer spirit. How are you going to get across that river? I don't know. We're going to figure it out when we get there. How am I going to get over those mountains? I don't know. We're either going to make a path or find it. And it's that type of I'm not sure, but here's what I do know. When we get there together, we can figure it out. That's the leadership of the 21st century.
Incredible. Well, we have 2 minutes before end, but I just want to make some closing comments. First, a question for both of you. Is it safe to say, because I've learned a lot, again, as I always do, that when a patient claims their dignity or they forgive themselves, can it lead to resilient behavior or a feeling of resilience for positive outcomes?
Absolutely. I think once people can reclaim their dignity, and with that comes forgiveness of self and others, they're able to bend without breaking. And they can remain the subject of the sentence, not the object, not this was done to me, but rather I do. I
Yes.
pledge, I commit. We talk about responding, not reacting. And
Right.
that means the word respond comes from the old French to pledge. What can you pledge to for yourself? It's
Yes.
forward looking.
Yes. Well, Phyllis, we have an upcoming show next week where we might be looking at this very case. Jennifer, before you had a chance to join us, Phyllis and I talked about co-hosting a special show on a case of Down syndrome where the patient, who will actually be on the show as well, was actually misrepresented for her illness in her home state. Well, I wouldn't call it state, her home territory of Canada. And the misrepresentation was a perception where, in my view, there's a missing element from what we've been talking about today. And I think the way we've closed the show right now in terms of having dignity leading to resilience, I think we're going to learn about that together, Phyllis. So everyone next week, stay tuned for a very special Frank About Health, where we are going to be supporting the advocacy work of the family members surrounding a Down syndrome individual. And we are almost ready to sign off. Usually I give my announcements of all the shows coming, but I think in the interest of time, just thank Phyllis and Jennifer for both being here. This is a bridge from my appearance on the Hard Skills to our next week's show. So I hope all of you basically watch the YouTube channel, the LinkedIn channel, everywhere that we are available, so that you can also find out where to see Jennifer Griggs' podcast, the Dignity Lab, and where you can also hear more, where Phyllis will be appearing or speaking and really pulling forth the conversation on workplace leadership, especially in the healthcare system. And as everyone knows, in the summertime, we will be releasing my new premium site, Health eMedia, where you will see expanded versions of Frank About Health. You will see the documentary we've been working on in the past 6 months. You will also potentially see other outgrowths of some of the many guests that have been on the show for the past 3 years. And obviously, both of you are going to be part of that. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. I will be back next week with Phyllis, as well as our special episode on Down syndrome in honor of Brain Health Awareness Month, right here on TalkRadio.nyc. We will see you next week. Take care.
Jen.
Bye-bye.